Crypto is back to hitting new all-time highs, and with that, we're seeing a whole new flock of Bitcoin expert advisors coming onto the marketplace. This video is sponsored by our free Golden Time Bomb Expert Advisor. Take your trading to the next level through automating the London Breakout and the Opening Range Breakout. Click the link in the description to download the EA completely for free. So this always happens. Every time crypto hits new highs, traders get excited. And because there's quite a bit of crossover between CFD traders and Bitcoin and crypto traders, people start buying EAs, which are Bitcoin specific. And it's kind of funny that this always happens. Like last time Bitcoin was hitting 100 and something when Trump first started to get elected, people were also buying Bitcoin EAs and chatting to me about them. So let's dive into this one, see if it's any good, and if they've kind of solved the conundrum that crypto often is challenging to trade with a CFD broker. So what I've always found trying to develop crypto EAs is that the issue with CFD brokers in crypto is that many brokers have very high spreads when it comes to Bitcoin or CFDs more generally, just because it's less competitive. And this makes it, so like more crypto CFDs more specifically. So that makes it a bit more challenging to make a crypto EA that works because your edge needs to be so massive to compensate for the spread. But here it appears to be a real bot from what I can see. And in terms of the actual strategy which they're mentioning, it's a classic breakout system. And that makes sense with crypto, particularly with Bitcoin. Like when it breaks, quite often it keeps going. So you can get some really good high risk reward strategies on Bitcoin using this style of breakout system. And that's exactly what it appears to be. It's nothing too crazy. It's just like a breakout system, trading on price level breakouts of Bitcoin. It's fairly economically priced. We can check out the live signal here too. We can see that it's been running for several months on IC markets. So also like actually legitimately very impressive here. And wow, I didn't realize it was quite this long, but it's been going for a nice period of time, even in more bearish periods. Like you never know how many signals he started, which is never, you can go check here in the seller profile, but we're only seeing one. So yeah, the signal is actually very impressive. Let's look at some stats. We're seeing a high win rate with a slightly inverted risk reward. That's actually pretty normal for this style of breakout system. Usually you have a wider stop loss because oftentimes if you hit a key level, there's a little bit of wicking out once you get there and you can rapidly hit the stop loss. But this is not like that inverted by any means. It's almost a 1-to-1, so looking good with a very high risk reward, with a very high win rate and a reasonable amount of trades, 87 trades, so it's showing that it's selective. I would venture that it's probably looking at a fairly higher time frame breakout. So it's running on the H1. It could be pretty much placing pending order at a high of so many on the H1 time frame or a high on the H4, even on the daily, because it's not trading that often. So I'd be curious to see what it is, but my guess is that probably he's looking for a local high, local low on the H1 time frame, placing pending orders. Most likely it's long only. Let's check here too. Is he taking any shorts? Yeah, no shorts. Makes sense. This is a pretty common thing on Bitcoin too. You'll only go long, particularly with very long biased assets. Sometimes it's easier just not to short them, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people would argue, being like, oh no, you're cheating, and it's like, well, if an asset goes up 90% of the time, it might make sense to only go long on it because like it covers up a lot of mistakes if you primarily go long on very bullish assets. So I would actually agree with this approach here. So far it's looking actually really good. So I ran this back test on Vantage using every tick based on real ticks. Vantage has super low spreads. They're a phenomenal broker. So it makes sense that if it's going to work with somebody, it probably would work here. We can see that indeed it is doing exactly what I think it's doing, placing most likely a pending order at this level, local high, local lows, and trading the breakouts of that. Sometimes you get these false breakouts. This is why in our rocket system we wait for a candle to kind of pierce these levels, but it's a very tried and tested strategy. Here too, I would imagine the pending order here, pierce, same thing here, pending order, pierce. So yeah. And back testing too, it's only long, so makes a lot of sense to me. Let's just double check to make sure that it's only going in with pending orders. It's not using market orders. Yeah, here we go. So clearly we can see a pending order, a buy stop, and this is probably going to change. And most likely it's going to go in with a pretty tight trailing stop loss. They have a expiration after a certain amount of candles. Oh no, it does not. And it's moving every so many candles. Here we go. And it uses a tight trailing stop loss. We're going to say stop loss move, stop loss. Yep, there we go. So very classic system. You know Lothi Milo, this is her style of bots too, except this gentleman seems to have done it in a fairly intelligent way on Bitcoin, but this has been done a million times. It's not really rocket science, but it works, right? It's a classic tried and tested strategy. Let me just pause this real quick. You just take like, you find a local high, local low. So you look for a candle, a high where you have 10 candles to the left and 10 candles to the right, where you have the highs are lower than a previous point. It's very straightforward to code that. And you say, okay, if this is a local high or a local low, just plays pending order there. And here what they'll do is they're putting a big TP so it looks like it has a positive risk reward, but realistically you're never going to hit the TP. That's why I personally don't put TPs in for this style of system, because you're going to actually exit using a trailing stop. As soon as you're a bit in profit, you'll just move the trailing stop loss, you'll get out. This is a classic system. It works. Nothing too much to it there. It's good as part of a portfolio because it's not a magic money printer, but it's a real system, real graph, and usually is pretty effective. If Bitcoin enters a long bearish period where you pretty much never kind of come back up to the tops, it just won't trade. I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing, or it will trade minimally, why it still did well in more of those bullish market, those bearish market conditions for Bitcoin. So yeah, I think it's been well done. It's a classic system, but this guy seems to have taken it and done a really good job. So overall, this looks actually really solid. So I'm quite impressed. He took a very tried and tested strategy and put it on Bitcoin, and I'm pretty impressed. So guys, I hope you liked the video, and I will see you in the next one.